Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered.
The GSMC Travel Podcast, brought to you by the one, the only GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Amanda Lloyd, and today we are discussing all things travel. We are going over bucket list adventures and things that you should definitely try before you die. How Instagram is ruining travel for all of us. We're covering some pretty hot jet lag hacks. And also flying first class, what that's really like, and what it means to be a dark tourist. So let's dive right in, shall we? So let's get started with our bucket list adventures. First of all, what is a bucket list? Where did this term come from? I did a little research, and I think you'll be just as surprised as I was to learn that bucket list is kind of a morbid term. So it comes from somebody like a long time ago, back in the day, standing on a pail or a bucket, and imagine their head is through a slip noose. And then when somebody kicks the bucket, then you know what happens after that. They die. So it's kind of like what you want to accomplish in your lifetime before you quote unquote kick the bucket. But fortunately, that bucket list has a much lighter meaning today. And when we think bucket list, we think all these Insta-worthy, adventures, right? So like swimming with the great white sharks in South Africa, or riding a hot air balloon in Turkey. We've all seen these amazing Insta spots, right? Right? Is it just me? Huh? Yeah. Well, today we're covering some must-do bucket list adventures. And no matter who you are, you can appreciate these top 3 bucket list adventures. Number 1 on my list is ziplining in Costa Rica. Ziplining is freaking awesome. So if you haven't done it, definitely put that on your bucket list. If you're an adventure junkie and you love the feelings of butterflies in your tummy, this is definitely for you. Now, I've been ziplining more times than I even care to count. And I'm not even trying to humble brag with that. I'm just trying to give you a little background on my street cred, my ziplining street cred, if you will. And I want to share with you one of my favorite experiences. It was in Costa Rica, and it was in the area of Guanacaste. They have a spot there where it's kind of like a 3-in-1 kind of adventure. And it does take, like 8 hours. So I would set aside a whole day for this, but you can horseback ride up the volcano and then you zip line all the way down through the treetops of the rainforest. And at the very end, you sit in these natural hot springs, because keep in mind it is a volcano, and you lather yourself with volcanic mud. Talk about a total bucket list item. One of the coolest things I've done in Costa Rica, but let's focus on the ziplining for just a second. Ziplining in Costa Rica is almost a rite of passage. I mean, unless you're deathly afraid of heights, then maybe this isn't for you. But the age ranges from like 5 to like 95 years old. And you really kind of feel, I mean, like, what better way to get your Tarzan on than jumping from a platform on a telephone wire and whooshing through the tippity tops of the rainforest? No matter where you are in Costa Rica, I bet you there is a ziplining extravaganza within 10-mile radius from where you are that you can enjoy the bird's eye view of the beautiful country that is Costa Rica. If you're looking for some hot spots to hit up, I have a few recommendations for you, so get your pen and paper out. My first one, Skytrek in Arenal. That one's pretty cool because it kind of has an open air gondola ride to get you to the tops of the trees. We have the Monteverde Extremo. That one's nearly, the platforms start at almost 1,400 feet. So they have like super long zip lines. There's also the waterfall canopy tour of Montezuma. This one's reasonably priced, about $45 you can expect to pay for something like this. They also have, there's the Swanky Papagayo Peninsula. And this one has the Witch's Rock canopy tour that I highly suggest. I mean, the views from these zip lines are unbelievable. And not just this one, but I mean, all of them. The views range from, dry forest to endless ocean to magnificent waterfalls and even sunsets, if you time it appropriately. Moving right along through our list of bucket list items you should definitely experience before you kick your own bucket is visiting the Great Barrier Reef. And for those of us who are just a little less geographically inclined, the Great Barrier Reef is located off the shores of Australia. Think the northwest corner of Australia near Queensland. And what's so special about the Great Barrier Reef is it's the largest living structure on the planet. Literally, it's so big, it's visible from space. And not only that, but because it has incredible visibility all year long, the Great Barrier Reef is world renowned for just amazing scuba diving locations. But if you're not into scuba diving, that's okay. They have other things. You can sail, you can swim, and a really fun, cost-efficient way to explore the Great Barrier Reef is to go snorkeling. A lot of times it's free. Now, one thing I wanted to know, so I'm sure that some people out there are wondering also, is if there are sharks in the Great Barrier Reef. And hold on to your willy whackers for this one, because yes, there are indeed sharks out there. However, in theory, there's no great white sharks because great white sharks are more of a cold water type fish. The species of sharks that typically you can find in the Great Barrier Reef would most likely be the white and black tip reef sharks. And a great follow-up question would be, now do these black tip reef sharks bite people? And again, hold on to your willy whackers because the answer is yes. However, before you write off the Great Barrier Reef, they do not pose a serious threat to humans. According to the International Shark Attack File, or ISAF, they have only recorded 11 unprovoked black tip reef shark bites on humans, and that's since 1959. So you have a higher chance of getting in a vehicle accident on the way to work than getting bitten by a shark, if that gives you any peace of mind. And on to my last and final bucket list recommendation is, drumroll please, the Northern Lights. Yeah, how magical of a gift is this to our planet? I know we've all seen pictures of the Northern Lights on probably Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook or even just Google around, but there's something about witnessing the Northern Lights in person that just makes you feel like such a miracle yourself. It's really like witnessing the Northern Lights is really kind of a transformational experience. Some people wait several years, even a lifetime, just to see this perfect and spectacular display take place right before their very eyes. A few fun facts. Sometimes it's called the Aurora Borealis, which is, newsflash, not so easy to say, so that's probably why we've nicknamed it the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights, as one might guess, is located at the northern top of our planet near the Arctic Circle. And the best time to view this spectacular display of lights is, I would say, late August, like September-ish, to the very beginning of April. But swimming the Great Barrier Reef is still relatively safe for everyone, as long as you're, aware of your surroundings, you follow the direction of the boat crew, swim within the viewing distance of the lifeguard, stay within the roped off areas, the natural, normal things you would do to be safe in everyday life. And another great tip is to bring like an underwater camera. That way you can take some really nice snapshots to remember that for later. To be honest, over the last 3 decades, the coral has kind of dissipated. It has to do with the pollution. Global warming has caused kind of like a coral bleaching epidemic. Also, it's due to some coastal development. It still remains a threat. But there are still some really good spots that you can swim and get some really good pictures. And I know it's kind of like, well, if there's not going to be great pictures, then I don't know if I want to waste my vacation there. But pictures aren't everything. Just because you can't post it to the gram doesn't mean you shouldn't check it out before the coral reef dies. And that is a great segue to my next segment. So stick around after the break when we talk about how Instagram is ruining everything.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Destinations. But what happens when these bucket list destinations become an Instagram checklist? I'm going to break down why Instagram and social media is ruining everything for all of us all the time. We kind of touched on this earlier, how human interaction is killing our Great Barrier Reefs, but that's not the only thing. Instagram is bad for our environment in general. I mean, we all do this, right? Like, we'll see a really cool Instagram picture with some Instagram influencer that we follow online, and we're like, man, that looks so cool. I want to go there. I want to take my own picture with that. So we get immersed in this Instagram life. And then you times this by, 50,000 people, and it subsequently takes a toll on the environment. I mean, there's a place in SoCal in the spring that's a field of blooming wildflowers. And a few Instagram influencers took a few photos, posted it online, and then a flock of humans to the tune of about 50,000 people went to this field and to take their own photo to post on Instagram. And when they flocked to this field, they trampled the flowers, they picked the flowers, and killed the field. I mean, these flowers will not grow back. They murdered the local ecosystem there. There's a tiny Austrian village. It's about 700 inhabitants. And if anything can take the name of perfect Instagram, backdrop, this is it. I mean, it's kind of on a lake. There's mountains. A lot of times there's snow-covered treetops. Keep in mind, there's about 700 people who live there. As soon as Instagram found out about it, there was an average of 80 tourist buses and 10,000 visitors pouring in on the daily. Now, this absolutely has an effect on the local ecosystem. When people leave trash behind, they're filming drones, right? They're flying these drones over to get their own perfect angle. They're scaring off the birds. I mean, they're destroying the peace and quiet, the nature, the very nature that you're trying to capture. Here's another great example. So in 2013, Instagram had about 90 million active users. In the same breath, Yosemite National Park saw about 3.69 million visitors, right? Fast forward about 3 years, 2016, Instagram had 600 million active users, and Yosemite saw about 5.2 million visitors. That's an average of over 4,000 extra visitors per day. And in reality, those are more concentrated into the summer months. But when all of those people leave trash behind, they litter the earth with their cigarette butts. You see plastic trash bags floating around. I mean, we are literally destroying our natural habitat just to get that perfect Instagram photo. My advice is to adhere to the quote unquote leave no trace, meaning if you purchase something, throw it in the trash can or recycle it, please. Be a responsible tourist and do your ethical duty as a human on this planet to preserve Mother Nature. And maybe we can save these beautiful experiences that we are allowed to experience in our lifetime for future generations. Let's talk about influencers and how social media is ruining our mental health. If I asked you, and I want you to be very honest, if I asked you, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? I bet 98% of the people listening to this podcast reach for their phone and check social media. Why? Why do we do this? Why do we spend our most precious moments getting sucked in the black hole that is social media? Because what is the good here? What's coming from this? You know what's happening? We're comparing our lives to these influencers that are living a fake life. We all know this is fake. There's a constant comparison, and it's a waste of time and energy. We scroll through our feed and we see photos that are perfectly staged with the perfect lighting, and it's edited oh so perfectly. And what do we think? We think, now I have to get up, roll out of bed, and go to my 9-to-5 job or whatever it is that you do. And it's this constant internal dialogue of my life isn't enough. Study after study indicates that social media is a catalyst for depression. Basically, we are measuring our self-worth based on the amount of social engagement. So if we post something and we don't get as many likes or comments as we think we should, oh, that's it. I must not be as valuable as I thought I was, And on the converse side of that, when we do get likes and comments and shares and follows, right? What's happening on a neurochemical level is that our brain is releasing a hit of dopamine. So you get a like, boop, there's a hit. You get a comment, boop, boop, there's 2 hits of dopamine. And this is a very similar reaction to when we take drugs. So it is actually very similar to a drug addiction. We can physically become addicted to social media. And it's not even the threat of addiction to social media, but it takes you out of the real life experience. So here you are spending your hard-earned PTO in this beautiful place that you've probably planned for a long time, and you want to experience, a new culture or a new food or something, but you're too busy looking down at your phone and creating content and editing photos and thinking about your captions that you're totally missing the real life experience, which is the point of travel anyway. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. But I'll leave you with this. The next time you have the opportunity to visit a destination that's been on your bucket list for a really long time, try to take the environment into consideration. Pick up after yourself, be a nice human. And if you do take content and you feel like you want to share it with your followers, your friends, or your family, just try not to get wrapped up in comparing yourself to these fake, lives that the influencers show us online. If your photo or your boomerang doesn't appear to be visually stimulating as theirs, or you didn't get as many likes or comments as you think you should, just take a moment and bring yourself back to the present, bring yourself back to reality, and remind yourself that you're traveling because you enjoy traveling. Travel on your terms, meet people, put your phone down, look around and take in the environment. Keep these memories in your mind so that when you're 90 years old, you can have these amazing stories to tell your grandkids one day. And you don't have to tell them, oh, I got 300 likes on a photo one time. That's not a good story. Nobody wants to hear about that. But what they do want to hear is how you met that really handsome guy at that art museum one time. Or how you met the love of your life and, surfing in Costa Rica. Those are going to be the good stories, the ones where you put your phone down and actually live your life. And that's ultimately why we do what we do. Stick around. We're cutting to break here shortly. But when we get back, we are talking about how we are all marred by the bane of the flyer's existence. I'm talking about time travel. I'm talking about jet lag. What exactly is it, and how do we avoid it? Coming up next.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
The topics of some amazing bucket list destinations and how Instagram is ruining everything. But now it's time to switch gears and talk about something I like to call time travel. You might know this more by the term jet lag, but either way, it can be such a downer. And unfortunately, there's no magic pill to prevent it, and everyone is susceptible. But I do have a few tips and tricks up my sleeve, and hopefully this will help you enjoy your next beach holiday. So let's dive right in. What exactly is jet lag? I would describe jet lag as a temporary sleep disorder, if that's the right word for it. It's basically when your internal clock is out of sync with the local time. So you feel sleepy when it's light outside, or you're wide awake at like 2:30, 3 o'clock a.m. when everybody else around you is sleeping. And it's those feelings of fatigue, maybe you feel slightly disoriented, you have difficulty concentrating. Some people get really bad headaches or feel like a physical exhaustion. Some people either experience diarrhea or constipation. None of these are good feelings to have when you just land in paradise. Now, here's what you need to know about jet lag. First of all, the world is divided into 24 time zones. That makes sense, right? And the clock changes 1 hour for every 15 degrees that you move east or west. Jet lag is caused more so by the direction that you're traveling as opposed to the length of time you've been traveling. So travelers who are flying west experience lighter effects than the travelers who are going east. And that's because when you go eastward, you kind of, quote unquote, lose time. So you're pushing your eating, your sleeping, your bowel movements, you're pushing everything forward, disrupting your body's natural 24-hour clock, or sometimes it's referred to as our circadian rhythm. We have this hormone in our body, it's called melatonin, and our body will release this hormone at nighttime, which tells our body that it's time to go to bed. And then when we wake up in the morning, our body stops secreting the melatonin, which allows our body to be up. And it kind of all depends on the light, the natural light that's outside. Okay, enough of the science talk. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the top tips I have for you to avoid or beat the jet lag. So number one is a few days prior to leaving, let's say you have a big long trip headed to Bali in a few days, I suggest if you're heading west, go to bed just a little bit earlier, a few days before the trip. If you're heading east, go to bed a little bit earlier. And that way you can get a head start on the shift that will happen with your natural body's circadian rhythm. Okay, number two, sunglasses. Get your shades out. You know, you see people sometimes and they're inside and they're wearing shades and you're always like, why are they doing that? Maybe they're going on a really big trip sometime. So just going back to the point that everything is about light, when your eyes perceive the light, your body wants to wake up. So a few days before your trip, wear sunglasses at the appropriate time, depending on if you're going east or west, and you'll help kind of alleviate some of that shift. If you are going a long distance, like over 7 hours of travel, I suggest planning a stopover or a layover somewhere in the middle. And that way, that kind of break can kind of allow your body to naturally and gradually adjust. Once you're on the flight, time out your activities. So whether it's eating or sleeping or you're getting up to go for a little stretchy or walk around the cabin, time out your activities according to the local time, like wherever your final destination is. And that way it'll kind of help you phase the shifting back in. Now, this next one's kind of a hot topic with like sleep medication. I know a lot of my friends really prefer this. I say proceed with caution. The reason why is because it doesn't actually help your body adjust naturally. So if you take the sleep medication, yeah, you're going to be asleep, but then it has to do with the light, not necessarily your sleeping. So the sleep medication doesn't really solve that problem. Make sure you're drinking a lot of water and staying hydrated. They say 8 ounces of water for every hour that you're on the flight. Try to avoid caffeine or alcohol because that can kind of make you dehydrated as well. Not to mention it can make you go be in an upper stage or a downer stage. So just drink a lot of water, and plus it'll give you an excuse to walk up and get around the cabin a little bit. I always say comfortability over style when I'm traveling, because when you're on a plane for an extended period of time, the last thing you want is to be in really stiff, tight jeans. You know what I mean? So wear comfortable, kind of loose clothing. Bring your earplugs, bring your eye mask, bring a pillow from home. Make yourself feel as super laid back and comfortable as possible. And then that way you can kind of allow yourself to fall asleep on the plane. Once you arrive at your destination, remember this tip. If you remember nothing else from this list, remember this tip. Follow the sun. So if you are land and it's daylight outside, spend the day outdoors. If you are landing and it's kind of afternoon, seek that afternoon light, and that will help you kind of move your clock forward to the sleep phase. Now, once it's actually time for bed, I have a few tricks here. So maybe 2 hours before bedtime, I do like to take a little melatonin, and that way it kind of allows your body, no matter what your mind and body are used to, that melatonin will start secreting and it'll tell your body, oh, no, I think I'm sleepy. It'll kind of help you get some sleep. I'm a bath person. This might not be for you if you're not a bath person, but I personally love bath time. It's my me time. So I love to take a hot bath right before bed. It raises your body temperature and it can help make you sleepy as well. In the very last one I have for you is try to get at least 4 hours of quote unquote anchor sleep on the local night, because if you get that as solid 4 hours of sleep, the next night you're bound to get a little bit more, maybe 6, and then the next night maybe you get 8, and boom, jet lag solved. You know what else could help solve jet lag and help make you feel super comfortable on the plane? Sitting first class. I'm not gonna lie, sitting first class definitely eases the blow of being marred by the bane of every flyer's existence. That is the jet lag. And we're talking all things first class coming up right after this short commercial break. I'll let you know exactly what it is, what you get in first class, if it's worth it, and how to get it for free right after this short commercial break.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
So much if you're just joining us. We just covered jet lag and how to beat it. And one fancy schmancy way is to, just casually book a ticket in first class. And if you've ever flown on a flight ever, you know what I'm talking about. The uber luxurious, leather, extra room, kings and queens of the flight. Can we just talk about the air rage that kind of like festers inside as you're boarding the plane and you're walking back to coach like the peasant that you are? And these people who are sitting in first class, they're just sipping their champagne and, either ignoring you completely because you don't matter, or they're scowling at you from behind their Gucci glasses and their newspaper. There's definitely something about sitting in coach, walking past first class, feeling the real divide of the socioeconomic classes. So here's the deal. First class really gets the hookup, depending on the length of the flight and the airline. Typically, first class will get the hookup on free drinks. That's almost a given. I mean, you get faster check-ins, higher security, priority boarding, which kind of all equals out to less stress in the end. You're not worried about sitting near and crying babies or somebody overlapping on your seat or stinky feet. Yeah, the dreaded stinky feet coming in between the seats. That's the worst. The seats themselves are just much nicer. They spend a lot more time with the quality. You have, the seats have 4 to 6 times more padding than the seats in economy do. And that's why it's just that alone, I think, could be worth the extra cost, but that's just me. You do get the extra leg room, although it kind of varies per airline. Sometimes you get larger TV screens, and depending on the airport, sometimes you get access to exclusive airport lounges like before your flight. And sometimes, ladies, these lounges include free mani-pedis. I mean, you can't get more luxurious than that. I immediately retract that last statement because actually, yeah, you can. Have you guys ever heard of Etihad Airways? Okay, because if you haven't heard of them, now you have. The Etihad Airways, you're not even ready for this. They have in their luxurious, like first class, have a 3-room residence on board. Not only that, this 3-room residence comes with its own butler, an in-suite shower, and a personal in-flight Michelin star chef. And if you can't afford all that, they do have small private apartments available, but I mean, come on. How can you get, I'm dumbfounded right now at the amount of luxury that's available if you have the money. There's another one, Emirates Air. This one's a little bit more popular. They have a complimentary chauffeur service. So I've actually flown Emirates Air when I was going to Bali a few years ago, and I didn't see this chauffeur service, but maybe that's because I wasn't sitting in first class. Qantas Airlines actually has free PJs, and these PJs are embroidered with a little kangaroo because, I mean, why not, right? But if you are interested in any of these, be prepared to drop thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars for a one-way ticket. There's a New York City to Abu Dhabi flight on Etihad. It's a first-class flight, and hold on to your willy whackers because this ticket will set you back a cool 32,000 buckaroos. That's right, $32,000, and all of that can be yours. I mean, is it worth it? At some point, you kind of have to question yourself, is it worth it? Logistically, I gotta be honest, you're getting both coach, economy class, and first class. You're getting to the destination, to the same destination at the same time. So logistically, no, it would not be worth it. It would not be worth the money that you spent. However, the people who are dropping this kind of change on first class, they're not doing it for the money. No. They are doing it for other reasons, like showing up, feeling rested, relaxed. Maybe you meet somebody on the flight that's really good for networking. Maybe they have some work to do, so they have their own little office space. They have their privacy. So these are the people who don't really care about the money so much as they value something else, whatever else it is that they value. But if you're like most of the humans who inhabit this planet, money is an issue for you. But what do you do when you want to treat yourself? And maybe you want to sit in first class, but you don't want to pay the thousands of dollars. Well, I have a few hacks for you, my friend. So sit down and take some notes. These days, they have several credit cards out there that offer points for when you spend money like you normally would on a credit card. They reward you with these point systems, and you can change these point systems in for travel miles or upgrades and things like that. If you're an avid traveler, you for sure have heard about the points guy or similar people who do kind of the same thing. So check some of those out for good pointers. You're already spending the money, so you might as well get rewarded for it if the credit card companies are going to give you back something, Also, if you're on a completely packed flight and you see the stewardesses walking down the aisle, asking people for volunteers to take the next flight, give up your spot. If you have a lot of time, give up your spot and negotiate an upgrade on the next flight. Once you find your seat and you sit down, check all around you. And by that I mean check your armrest. Does it go up and down? Recline your seat back and forth. How about the tray table? Give that a little look-see, a little once-over. If there's anything dysfunctional or about your seat, let the flight attendant know, and they could move you into a new seat, and it could be first class. So there's a nice little way to do it. Also, if it's a special occasion, if you're flying for, let's say, a birthday or an anniversary or a honeymoon, definitely let the flight attendees know, because a lot of times they'll try to make it a little extra special for you. And one of the biggest tips I have is so rudimentary, but people forget it. But just be nice, like be kind, because the flight staff, they have power. They can move you to a new seat. So just smile and be nice and understanding. I've actually gotten upgrades like that before. So I'm telling you from firsthand experience, it works. All right, it's that time again where we're heading to a really quick break. But after the break, stay tuned, because we're going all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and we are discussing dark tourism. What is it and why is it a thing? We'll be right back right after this.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
After the break, and we're back at it again. We just discussed the high-end luxury that is first class, and now let's head to the opposite end of the spectrum. Well, we'll discuss dark tourism. Many people haven't even really heard of this, and if they have, they kind of associate it with a negative connotation, and it's easy to understand why. Dark tourism is historically associated with things like death and tragedy. So if you think genocide, assassination, incarceration, ethnic cleansing, war, disaster, these are the type of events that not only appeal but attract dark tourists. And if you think dark tourism is in the minority, think again. There are millions of people who travel around the world just to visit the most unhappy places. And these aren't just a part of their vacation. Most of the time, it's the entire point of the vacation. So one might ask oneself, why? Like, what is the point of dark tourism? And if I had to just take a guess, I think it would have something to do with our obsession of things like ghost stories or murder mysteries. There's just a human element out there that's just kind of curious about the unknown. And it's no doubt becoming more mainstream because there was a dark tourist special on Netflix that launched about a year ago. And then Chernobyl came out on HBO. There's also a dark-tourism.com website, and it lists some of, I think it's over 100 places on the planet that you can visit if you're into the whole dark tourism thing. Some of the most visited dark tourist spots on the planet: number 1, Auschwitz with the concentration camp. Absolutely just a somber, introspective feeling as you're walking around and just trying to imagine all the horrific events that went on during that time. There's the Chernobyl. We kind of talked about that one a little bit earlier. Fukushima in Japan. The Gettysburg Address. There's the Kennedy assassination. It's right here in my hometown of Dallas. The 9/11 Memorial that's in New York City. The Colosseum in Rome is a big one. We don't really think about that one as a dark tourist spot, but several gladiators, so many people died in that arena fighting for their lives. One place you probably haven't heard of is the genocide, the Cambodian genocide. This happened around 1975 to 1979. A man named Pol Pot was in political power and managed to kill over 21% of the population at the time, which was about 2 million people. And his goal? To make a classless society that avoid capitalism at all costs. And there are some very dark memories in the Cambodian history, but one of the hardest places, no doubt, in the city is a place called Chong Elk, also known as the Killing Fields. And this is where people were brought to die. The sadistic soldiers would bring you to this field and beat you to death. They would slit your throat, behead you, even beat your baby against a tree just to make you watch the life slip out of them. I mean, it is such a dark and gruesome thing. It's hard for the average person to even begin to imagine. It's such a difficult and tragic history that it's really hard to even wrap your head around this type of evil. And it's really kind of sad because not a lot of people know about it, and it happened, just a few decades ago. No doubt every person who's living in Cambodia right now has either been personally involved or knows somebody who is very close to them who was involved in this sadistic massacre. And the generation right now, the population is very young because most of the parents, the moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the brothers, the sisters, most of them were separated and killed off. If you visit Cambodia now, these are some of the nicest, most welcoming, happiest people on the planet. So it really says something about the resilience of the human spirit and the willingness to forgive and move forward. I think part of being a dark tourist is kind of approaching a culture with this open-minded curiosity to attempt to understand maybe a difficult past. You're pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, and it's going to make you feel things that you maybe haven't felt or didn't really want to feel. It's going to make you think about things that maybe you haven't thought before. Traveling the world and partying all the time. Sure, that sounds fun, but it's not all about lavish indulgences and ultimate relaxation. At some point, travel is more than that. There's a difference between a tourist and a conscious traveler. And, travel is multi-dynamic. So if you allow yourself to have a better understanding of the past, then you can have a better understanding of the present. When you go through these experiences like in Cambodia or something like Auschwitz, you definitely have time to reflect. You definitely can kind of comprehend or attempt to comprehend the amount of evil that humanity is capable of. And I think if we can understand that, it somehow makes you a better person. It brings you out of your comfort zone, and it makes you a better traveler. It makes you a better friend, a better family member. It makes you a better passing stranger. And ultimately, it makes you a better human. We are heading to a really quick break, but stick around because after you come back, we are lightening things up just a bit, and I am sharing my top 8 tips for eco travel and things that you can do on your next travel destination that can help the world be a better planet. Right after this break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We just covered the dark topic of dark tourism, but now we're going to lighten things up a little bit and answer some of the most frequently asked questions of the week. The first question we have here is, why do we need to turn off all of our electronic devices before an airplane takes off and lands? That is a really good question. What they say is it has something to do with the interference of the electromagnetic sphere that is the airplane, but guaranteed that even though the flight staff repeatedly tell us to put our phones on airplane mode about 17 times before takeoff, the stats are about 4 in 10 people still disregard these warnings. So what that means is there's little evidence that stands behind the electromagnetic interference, but there's still a few anecdotal instances where it's like one time there was a flight where a 30-degree navigation error was just simply rectified by a passenger turning off his portable DVD player. So it's things like that you're like, maybe this has some credibility to it, but really, for the most part, we don't really know the answer to that. Question number 2. Do you have to be rich to travel the world? Honestly, travel is probably one of the more expensive hobbies that you can have, but there are websites out there nowadays that can help you find and book, like Skyscanner.com. I really like that site a lot. That's my little secret go-to. But honestly, Google Flights has really never let me down. The good old trusty Googs. And there's another secret that I'd like to share with you. If you book at the right time and the right day, you can actually get a cheaper fare statistically. So if you're doing a domestic flight, that's 57 days in advance. If you're going international, book 117 days in advance. I find that Tuesdays at 10 a.m. are the best times to book the flight. So there you go. You don't have to be a Beyonce or a Bill Gates to travel the world. If you kind of scour the internet for some deals, there's some good things out there for you. The next question. What are some common items that you bring with you every time you travel? I love this question. I usually pack a few staple items. So number one, I always pack some sort of like power strip or like a portable charger, something that can charge my laptop, charge my phone. The worst thing is when you are out or on a plane and your phone is dying and you don't have an available power source. It's like when your phone dies, your life dies. So I always keep a power charger handy. The next thing I bring is like a scarf or a wrap or a pashmina, especially if I'm on a plane. It gets super chilly on the plane, so I like to have something to wrap up with. But then it doesn't take up a lot of room in my luggage, so when I finally do land, I can just kind of stuff it in there. One really cool trick that I do that I don't think a lot of other people do is I always take a picture of like my luggage and then my passport. So that way, if I lose anything, if the airline accidentally loses my my luggage, I at least have something of proof to back myself up. So yeah, those are my little tidbits. And my next question, what is it really like to be a travel writer? Well, it's awesome, and sometimes it's not. So, sometimes you find this like beautiful beach hideaway in a really remote destination, but then other times, you're sitting in an airport because of a missed flight or several delayed flights, So one day you have a delicious meal and the next day you have a nasty case of like deli belly. So, I guess it's equal parts rewarding and challenging. But you can kind of say that for anything, right? These days, the travel gets all the glam, the glitz and the glam without any of the realities. But trust that there are some not so great things that happen being a full-time travel writer. The next question, what's the best way to sleep on a plane? Well, you know what? Sometimes these work for me and sometimes these don't, but I'll share them with you anyway. Well, first of all, there's a little joke in the traveling world they swear by a knockout cocktail, and this is called the Ambientini. It's a sleeping pill with a vodka chaser. I, of course, do not recommend this, especially if you don't have a prescription from a doctor. So I am no way telling you to do this. It's just a little joke, but there are better and safer ways to get through the flight. I like to do a few drops of lavender essential oil and kind of put it on my face mask and put my face mask on and cover my eyes and kind of nod away. It does help me too if I get some sort of pre-flight exercise. So either some yoga or maybe some HIIT. Definitely if you're going to do something that makes you sweaty, have some in-flight etiquette and take a nice quick shower before you get on the plane. Who's the most interesting person you have sat next to on a plane? Ooh, this is a wonderful question. I always seem to find, knock on wood, I always seem to find I have really good seatmates and pretty good like chatters. Like they'll chat sometimes, and then when I kind of want to stop, they like kind of stop talking too. So I have never had like a really bad seatmate. I've had like some that pop out in my head, but nothing story worthy. One of my really good friends though actually got to sit next to Bill Murray. So that was she kind of takes the cake from me on that one. And the next question here is TSA PreCheck really worth it? Great question. I went so long without checking into TSA PreCheck because I just, really didn't know what it was. But I advise, if you are an avid traveler, go for the global entry versus the TSA PreCheck. It's basically kind of the same thing, but it's only $15 more, and it kind of is true to its name. It's the global entry instead of just domestic. And likely, if you do a lot of domestic flying, you'll get the TSA PreCheck by default. So there you go. What is your favorite airline? I liked Emirates. Emirates was nice. It would have been nicer if I got first class, but I didn't have an extra $10,000 to spend. Singapore Airlines is really nice, but domestically, I think my favorite is Virgin America. Has anybody out there ever flown Virgin? It's pretty cool. I like it. They have these little lights that kind of light up the floor, and it kind of feels like you're in a movie theater a little bit. And it's just a little bit more fancy. What is the most beautiful beach in the world? Oh my goodness gracious, great balls of fire. This is almost like the impossible question. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Well, first of all, Antigua they claim to have 365 beaches, one for every day of the year. But, I don't know. There's a beach in, the Caribbean. It's called, what was it called? Joss Van Dyke. It's in, the Virgin Islands. It is absolutely gorgeous. There are some really incredible beaches in the Philippines. I've been to some beaches in Bali and a beach in Hawaii, actually. They're made of jet black sand, and this is because the sand comes from the volcanic ash, which both Indonesia and Hawaii are actually volcanoes. So you have these jet black sands with little sparkles of diamonds kind of sprinkled throughout, and that's really beautiful. But really, if you're on a beach, I guess not every beach is beautiful, but no complaints here. I'm not a beach snob. If I'm on the beach, I'm happy. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have tonight. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write us a nice little review. That really, really helps us out. Also, if you did enjoy this, give us a little love, a little like, a little follow on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you again so much. I'll see you soon, and have a good night. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From travel to health and wellness to entertainment and life and happiness to sex and relationships. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast.